welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. Today we are taking a look at the mini set Winter Dragon. This set has a cute little dragon who wears a scarf. You can see I've already colored and cut him out. There's also some little snowflakes, which I'm going to stamp out using some moonstone ink for my first card that I'm going to create here. There's two sizes of snowflakes, and there's a die that will cut these out as well. There's also some little sparkly stamps in this set, and of course there is we're going to say snowflake breathing breath here, so the little dashed lines like a fire breathing dragon, but in this case we have a frosty dragon. So I'm going to stamp that out in some gray ink, and I'll use the coordinating dies to cut out all these little pieces here. So I'm just going to line those up, hold them in place with a little bit of washi tape, and run that through my die cut machine, and now I have all these little snowflakes and that little swirly breath. I'm going to be using papers from the Let It Shine paper pack. For this card, I'm going to use the pink with the white dots for my background and the cream with the gold dots for a circle. So I've got a stitch rectangle out of the pink, a stitch circle out of the cream, and a scallop circle out of some moonstone cardstock. So I'm going to start by putting the pink stitch rectangle that I cut, and you can see this one's cut from a 12 by 12 piece. And I'm going to center it up on a card base made from some vanilla malt cardstock. So it's got that nice cream color to go with the cream circle of the pattern paper, and we'll have that nice cream frame around it. So for the circle, I'm just going to layer the cream with the gold dot stitch circle onto that moonstone scallop circle, and you'll get that nice blue scallop frame around the circle. And this will go with the snowflake and the ink that I use for the snowflakes. I'm also going to use the purple from Spiffy Speckles for my sentiment to kind of tie in with the purple of my dragon. So I was going for wintry but not Christmassy colors on this card. So I'm stamping out the sentiment that says have a very magical holiday season. I'm stamping out holiday season twice because I didn't get it inked up very well the first time. You can see how that second one's a little bit darker, which is fine because I'm going to cut these apart and make little strip banners for each of these. So I'm just going to use my trimmer here, and I'm going to line it up, and I'm just going to cut these into little strips. This is a good way to add a sentiment and add a little more color as well. You could just stamp this below the circle, but I just think that this pulls that purple color in just a little bit more. So I'm just going to trim them off to the right length so I don't have that extra paper on each side. And now I'm going to start to assemble all these pieces onto the card. I'm going to start by adding a little bit of twine, and this is the Ocean Sparkle cord. So this is a white twine with some blue sparkle twisted in. So I'm just going to wrap it around my card base twice, and I'm going to tie that bow to the left side of the circle. So the circle is going to be centered, and I'm just going to tie it to the left. And once I get that bow tied and nice and tight, I can trim off the tails and adjust those strings around it to the places that I want. So I'm just going to trim off those tails, and then I'm going to add some foam to the back of my circle. You can see I've put it at the top and the bottom so that the twine will be in between and I don't have to worry about that getting in the way. So I'm just lining everything up where I want it, and then I'll just make sure it's nice and stuck down. And then I'm going to do the same thing to my little sentiment strips. I'm going to add some foam squares to the back of each of those so that they're popped up from the background just like my circle. And I'll just line those up below. So now to add my dragon, I've added some thin foam squares to him, and I'll just center him up in my circle. And then I can take the little frosty breath and just tuck that behind his head and glue that down so it looks like he's breathing that frosty air. And then I've just sprinkled my snowflakes around. So they're very subtle because they're white and they're stamped in that light blue ink. But I like how it keeps the focus on my little dragon. But I also added some stardust stickles so that they were sparkly and stood out just a little bit more than they did without this. And I think it adds just a nice shine to the card. And then here is that finished card with that cute little winter dragon. I just think he is adorable. So for my second card, we're going to make a little scene and pull in some other friends to go with our dragon. But first I'm going to start out with a piece of Bristol cardstock cut with a stitched rectangle, and I'm going to create the background for my little scene. So I'm using some tumble glass distress oxide, and I'm just kind of putting that all over in the center. And then I'm going to go in with broken china and kind of do the corners and the sides so that you kind of have a lighter glow in the middle and darker as you move to the outside. And then once I've got that on there, I'll just go back with the tumble glass blending tool and just blend out the harsh line between the two so that you get a nice fade between the dark and the light. So I wanted to create a snowy sky, so I'm going to use the snowy sky stencil, and I've got my metal mat underneath my blending mat, so these are just magnets that are holding everything down in place. You could also use tape, and then I'm going to use some white glitter gel to put through the stencil to create my snow. So I'm just going to pick that up with a palette knife and put it all over, making sure it's down into those openings of the stencil and I have good coverage all over. And then I can just scrape away the excess and put that back into the container. You could also achieve this snowy look through the stencil by using some white ink or some white paste, just whatever you have on hand to get that snowy sky look. So once I've got good coverage everywhere and I've got all that excess wiped off, I'm going to carefully peel off my stencil, and you can see I've got that glittery snowy sky in my background. So I'm going to set that aside and let it dry, and I'm going to go clean off my stencil so that that doesn't dry on my stencil. So for the bottom, I've cut a piece of just white cardstock with that same stitched rectangle, the same size as the background, and I'm going to stamp the sentiment in some peacock ink right along the bottom. And then this is going to be the snowy hill for the base of my little scene. So I'm going to cut the top of this with a stitched hillside. So I'll just lay that where I need it and hold it in place with some tape and run it through my die cut machine. So I'm just kind of checking that I have it high enough, checking that the tree I'm going to use fits, and I'll run that through, and now I have my snowy hill for the bottom. So I'm going to use Winter Dragon with Little Dragon, also Winter Unicorn. These are some fun magical friends you can add. And I'm also going to use the tree from Christmas Dreams. And I'm also going to use this little unicorn from Say What Christmas, because I think that one looks like a fun little like stuffed unicorn present under the tree. So now that my glitter gel has dried, I can add my snowy hill at the bottom. And then I'm going to add this whole panel to that card base you see there, which is made from some ballet slipper cardstock. So now it's time to build my little scene. I've already got all my images colored and cut out. I'm going to start with the tree in the center, and I've put some thin foam squares on the back so that it's popped up slightly from the background. Then I'm going to add my winter dragon up here in the sky, like he just put the star on top of the tree. Then I have the little dragon and the winter unicorn. And these presents are from Christmas Dreams, and then the little Say What Christmas unicorn. So he looks like he's in the pile of presents. So I'm just laying them there for placement so I know where I want them. And now that I've kind of got that, I can add some foam squares to the back of these pieces as well and adhere them down. So normally I would glue that unicorn to the presents, but I wanted it to be on thin foam squares and then the presents are on thicker ones so we have some dimension just in that little pile of presents. And then finally I'll add my winter unicorn. He looks like he's running over to the pile of presents with his unicorn toy sitting on top waiting for him. And then I'm going to go in with some Stickles glitter and just add some glittery elements to some of my images. So I added it to the wings of the dragons. I'm adding it to some of the ornaments on the tree as well as the star. And I also added it to the horns of the unicorns. And then there is this finished card, which I just think is adorable. Now let's take a look at some examples from the design team. Yainea made this super sweet card, and I love how she made an ombre effect on the banner behind the dragon by adding ink to the pattern paper from Let It Shine. It's just such a cool look. Tammy made this really fun slimline card by pairing the dragon with the other magical creatures in the Build a Castle, which I just think is so much fun. I love Audrey's card, and that snowy background she made for her little dragon. On that red background, that green dragon really pops. I love Kara's card and how she pulled in all the metallics with that snowflake border and her embossing as well. Letitia's card is super fun. I love her combination of the snowflake stencil, the cloud stencil, and she also added some Christmas boughs in there to frame up her little dragon. Grace's card is super clever. I love this speech bubble where the little girl is reading a story about the winter dragon. It's just so sweet. And then Megan's card is super fun, where she used the reveal wheel to make that dragon move above that coffee cup as it sprinkles magical sprinkles inside. And then finally, Elise used the winter dragon and the little dragon to make this fun scene with all these dragons up in the clouds getting ready for Christmas. Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye!